AP reported last week it was removed from the safe in the weeks before the president's inauguration, but it was unclear whether the documents were destroyed or simply moved to a more secret location. We do know, however, prosecutors in the Cohen case subpoenaed records from both the Enquirer and its parent company, AMI, a fact they revealed in open court last week. And this is important, according to the New York Times, their investigation did not end with Cohen's guilty plea. To help understand the president's relationship to the Enquirer and the implications of his exposure to blackmail, I'm joined by Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter and Trump biographer David K. Johnson, author of It's Even Worse Than You Think, What the Trump Administration is Doing to America, and MSNBC contributor Natasha Bertrand, staff writer for The Atlantic. David, I'll start with you as someone who covered the president for decades in his previous life. He was always sort of inextricably bound up with the tabloid press in sending secrets about his foes and keeping his own secrets out of the paper.
Oh, yes. Donald was Mr. Fake News, and much of his persona is based on fake news. And he also, as he himself has said, has gotten politicians to do his bidding, have done favors for him. There's everything from the mystery of the missing Manhattan sewage, 24 million gallons a day when he needed that for a deal, to the mysterious transfer of his friend and helicopter provider, Joe Wexelbaum's drug case from Ohio to the courtroom of his sister, federal judge Marianne Trump Berry.
So, Natasha, the thing that I wonder about here is blackmail is at the center of the Steele Dossier. It's at the center of the investigations that happen when people apply for security clearance because it is viewed as a security threat. And what is revealed in the New York Times story is that the idea of that is not at all far-fetched, and in fact, it already exists.
Right. The idea is that this is potentially the most blackmailable president in United States history. I mean, the fact that the National Enquirer had decades of information about his affairs, about his children, about even Melania, speaks volumes about the president's life and all of the kind of shady things he did throughout his career, many of which, most of which, perhaps all of which he actually never even faced real consequences for. But I think that this substantiates two big claims in the dossier. The first, of course, is that Michael Cohen was the president's fixer in all things related to Russia. So just as he was the fixer in all things related to burying stories about Trump's extramarital affairs, he was also, according to the dossier, his fixer in burying the story of the Trump campaign's conspiracy with Russia to win the election. He was alleged to have paid off the hackers and to kind of clean the whole thing up at the end of the election. The other thing that we've learned from this story unfolding is that Trump actually is a little bit more skittish about his extramarital affairs becoming public than many of us have been led to believe.
That is a great point.
So there's always been this theory that perhaps the president really wouldn't care if news came out that prostitutes peed on a bed in Moscow because he hated President Obama and he wanted to defile the bed that he slept in. And no one was really sure whether or not his base would care. But now we know that Trump has gone to great lengths to hide these details about his personal life. And that really makes you wonder that if those salacious details in the dossier are true, then what lengths has the president gone to in order to keep the Russians from exposing that as well?
Let me just note that Lanny Davis, who is a sort of spokesperson for Michael Cohen, has denied that Michael Cohen went to Prague to clean things up, as is alleged in that dossier. I want to just put that on the record because he's been pretty strenuous on that. So that is the current position of Cohen's spokesperson. But David, that point about Natasha, I think, is a really good one. There is this sense that here's a guy where all this stuff is priced in, okay? He's been in the public eye. He had some of the most famous extramarital affairs in New York history. As a 13 or 14-year-old, I knew all about his marital life growing up in New York City. He's on the front pages of tabloids. But this does show the lengths to which they were willing to go to suppress stuff and how, for whatever reason, embarrassed or intent on keeping secrets they were.
Well, let's remember that Donald actively pursued the wives of a number of people he did business with, would invite women to his office and then get their husbands on the phone to talk about their dalliances as part of his rather unusual seduction technique. And some of those women, no doubt, are very concerned about what may come out of that vault. And I think it is almost certain that if we had a complete record of Donald's dalliances and his payoffs to keep them quiet, that we would turn up abortions. And that would raise real serious problems with a portion of his base who are absolutely adamant about that issue.
I just want to be clear. That is speculation on your part, that you don't have reportings to substantiate that.
No, there are women whose names I know, but who are not willing to come forward because it would be difficult for them.
All right, I have no independent. I just want to be clear. That may be true. It may not
you
be
have
true.
no independent
I have no independent confirmation, so I have no way to assess that claim. But
right.
what is clear here, Natasha, is also that this investigation, and this I thought was one of the most important part of the New York Times piece, that this part of it isn't done, right? There was this question of, was this all kind of built up to get Michael Cohen, and Michael Cohen please and it's over? And what the Times is reporting is, no, it's ongoing.
Right, and I think that a really smart thing that prosecutors in the Southern District of New York did was they kind of vacuumed up Alan Weisselberg in all of this. So in an effort to kind of get more information about Michael Cohen's role in perhaps committing these campaign finance violations by killing these stories, by paying off the National Enquirer, they actually got the president's longtime CFO of the Trump Organization to testify against him. And that is evidence to many people that I speak to that he's going to continue to be useful throughout this investigation. And of course, Alan Weisselberg, we've all said it before, he knows where all of the bodies are buried. So this is really just beginning as long as Weisselberg is in the picture.
Also, presumably, Michael Cohen and David Pecker are just hanging out there knowing what's in the vault, which has to, at some level, freak the president out because he wanted to secure and lock that down, and now it is very much not locked down. David K. Johnson and Natasha Bertrand, great to have you both.
Thanks.
For more on the president's legal exposure and where